Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of two little girls. I have a 4-year-old named Kylie and I also have a 2-year-old named Mia. Now the spring season is just about upon us and I know that many of you are already on the hunt for some spring activities for your child's work shelf. Whether you are doing full-on themed shelves for the season or you're just looking for a couple of activities to help add a touch of the season to your child's existing work, I think that I've got a little something for everyone in today's video. So from one busy parent to another, today I would like to share with you 26 spring Montessori activities and some book recommendations that would be perfect for toddlers or preschoolers in your Montessori home. So most of these activities are going to be appropriate for both toddlers and preschoolers. There are a couple on the list, especially the ones related to language and mathematics that are more so intended for the preschool age group, but honestly, with a little bit of creativity, it's usually pretty easy to modify an activity so that it's more appropriate for a younger age group. So I will try to point out those opportunities where I can throughout the video for you just to help give you some ideas, but otherwise just try to keep your mind open to seeing those possibilities. And just as a little side note, while the vast majority of these activities are all centered around spring, there are a couple of them sprinkled in there that also have to do with St. Patrick's Day, which is perfect because we are just now entering the month of March. Now, I've got a lot of activities to share with you, so let's go ahead and dive right in. And I would like to start with the sensorial activities, the first of which is called spring shadow matching. So for this activity, your child is presented with 2 sets of cards, one of which has a variety of different spring themed items on them, and then the other is a matching set of the silhouettes that go with those objects. And then your child's task is to lay out the cards that have all of the spring pictures on them and then go through the silhouettes one by one, trying to identify all of the matches. And this activity is a really great example of one that can be used for either toddlers or preschoolers. The next activity is a classic Montessori favorite, and that is a spring-themed mystery bag. So for this activity, your child is presented with a drawstring bag and a small basket of about 5 to 7 different objects that are all related to spring in some way, whether that be by theme or by color. The only thing that really matters is that they are easily identified by using the sense of touch and also pretty easily distinguishable from each other. And there are actually several different ways that you can do this activity. So one way is to present the items to your child, allow them to see what they are, then place them into the bag and ask them to retrieve a specific object using only their memory of it and their sense of touch, which we call the stereognostic sense. Another way it can be done is to have your child reach into the bag, tell you what they think they're holding before they take it out, and then pull it out to verify. And then finally, another way you can present the activity, especially if you want your child to be able to do it independently, is to put the drawstring bag, the object, and a set of cards that corresponds to each of the objects in the tray and just leave it on the shelf. This way your child can put all the objects into the bag, they can shuffle through the cards and pick out which object it is they want to try to find, and they can do that until they've gone through all the cards all by themselves. The next activity are spring geoboard cards. For this activity, your child is presented with a geoboard and a set of spring-themed geoboard pattern cards for them to try to recreate. In this example here, I'm just using the plain colored rubber bands that we happen to have on hand, but you can also use colored rubber bands if you prefer. The next group of spring-themed activities are all related to the area of practical life, and the first one is ribbon weaving. For this activity, you can use a piece of craft foam in any color that you'd like to cut out any spring-themed shape that you like. Here I just did a simple green leaf, but what you'll do is cut out your shape, cut some slits into the middle of it, and then present it alongside a small bowl of ribbons that have all been cut to the same length and allow your child to practice weaving, which is really great for fine motor work and coordination. Another early sewing work activity that you can try is a DIY lacing card. These are honestly really easy to make yourself at home. All you need to do is go online and find a picture of something spring themed that you think will interest your child. Here I chose a purple flower for my daughter. Print it out, laminate it, use a hole puncher to punch holes all around the perimeter, and then provide them with a shoelace to practice lacing with. Now, younger children can practice lacing just using a simple running stitch where they're practicing that motion of going from one hole to the next in order, just up and down, in and out in a straight line. Whereas older children who've had a little bit more practice with it may actually like to try other different kinds of stitches. For example, the whip stitch, which goes around the edge of the card, which does tend to be a little bit more difficult. Another super simple but really fun practical life activity that you can set up is an insect dig. So for this one, your child is presented with a bin or just a bowl of some colored rice that's completely dry, and then there are a bunch of insect figurines buried inside of it. They are also given a pair of tweezers or some other kind of implement for them to practice their fine motor skills with. So this might be a scoop for a younger child, but tweezers are a much better challenge for an older child. And their task is to retrieve all of the insects from the rice using that tool. Again, super simple to set up, but very high on the fun factor for young children. And if you've never made rice that is colored before, it's super simple. All you have to do is get a bag of plain white rice, put it into a big Ziploc bag, add a couple of drops of vinegar and a couple of drops of whatever food coloring you prefer, and then just mix it all around until the color is completely distributed. After that, you just want to lay it out for like a day or two in a flat layer, like on a big cookie sheet to help it dry. But after that, it's good to go. You can put it in a bag and store it and reuse it over and over again for months on end. The next activity is flower pin punching, where your child is mounting a small piece of paper that has a spring-themed shape on it. And here again, I chose flowers, but you could choose anything. And it is put on top of something that you can poke holes into. I've just used a cork trivet that I actually think I got from IKEA, and then also a jumbo-sized push pin. And the goal is for your child to punch holes repeatedly along the outline of the entire figure to the extent that it effectively cuts the shape out of the paper by the time they're done. So this does take quite a while and a lot of patience. Your child might not get through the entire thing all in one sitting, and that's okay. That's something that they can work on over time, but it again does require a lot of patience on their part. And if you can't find a jumbo push pin, you can also use one of those little corn cob stabber things that goes on the end. I've heard of people just busting one of the tines off so that it only has one little pokey end, and then they can use that for their pin punching work as well. Now, pin punching is a very traditional Montessori preschool classroom activity, but it does require the use of a sharp object. So I would always encourage you to use your discretion as a parent, whether or not you think your child is ready to understand the safety risks of using a sharp pin. There are definitely some ways to modify it as well for a younger child. I think I've actually seen versions of it where the shape is much larger and they use something like a golf tee to punch holes along the edge of the shape so that they're still able to do it, but there's not the inherent safety risk of a sharp pin. Okay, so the final practical life activity is insect sifting and sorting. So for this activity, your child is going to use a slotted spoon or a small sieve of some kind to sift through some sand looking for some hidden insects. And here I've used some small wooden ladybugs and honeybees that are actually meant for craft projects, but I've hidden them in the sand alongside a small little tray that allows them to not only sift and retrieve the bugs, but to then sort them into their respective piles of only ladybugs or only honeybees. Now for a younger crowd, you might consider offering just one kind of object to sift for, so just ladybugs, just honeybees, as opposed to different kinds. This way they're really isolating that skill of sifting alone and only focused on that. But this is an activity that I am using with my own children as well, and I happen to know that they would enjoy a little bit more of a challenge, so I added in 2 different bugs for them to sift and then sort. And just as a little budget-saving DIY tip for you, the sand that I used for this activity, I actually purchased at the dollar store. It was just pure white sand, and all you have to do is add a little bit of food coloring to it and mix it around really well inside of a Ziploc bag, and you can dye it in any color that you'd like. So you don't have to go out and buy a bunch of craft sand in different colors, because that definitely could add up really quickly. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to our cultural activities now, which typically include lessons related to science and geography and things like that. Here though, I have chosen to focus on science specifically. And the first activity is all about the worm life cycle. So something simple and easy that you can do is to just put up some worm anatomy posters in your child's learning area that you can talk about and use during your lessons. But a way that you can take it a step further is to introduce them to a worm life cycle sequencing activity. And this one is quite simple. Your child is just placing the different parts of the worm life cycle in the appropriate place on the life cycle chart. Now you can easily do this as a cut and paste activity, but here I knew that I wanted to be able to reuse it, so I laminated everything and added Velcro sticky dots. Another fun spring-themed activity around life cycles is sequencing the life cycle of a butterfly. So for this one, your child gets a basket containing some butterfly life cycle figurines and a set of cards to go along with it. And you can do it in 2 ways. One, you can have them sequence the cards first and then match the figurines to the cards, or they can sequence the figurines first and then match the cards thereafter. Another simple but fun classic Montessori activity that is great for the younger group is just some simple object to picture matching with backyard birds. For this one, your child is presented with a small basket containing the backyard bird figurines and a set set of cards to go along with them. And their task is just to lay out all of the cards and then one by one match the figurines to each of their respective cards. Now, for a younger audience, you definitely want to make sure that the cards are identical to the actual figurine. But for slightly older children that have had some experience with this already, or they're just ready for some more challenge, you can offer cards that are photographs of the same bird. So they're similar, but they're not identical, if that makes sense. And also for older children, especially if they're learning to read, you can present them with a set of cards that actually has the word label underneath the picture, as opposed to just a card with the picture by itself. The next activity is Backyard Birds 3-part cards, which can be modified for both toddlers and preschoolers. So it is a very versatile and classic Montessori activity. So for the younger age group, only use it as a matching activity. So you can have your child lay out the control cards first, which is the one with the picture and the word, and then just give them the picture cards and have them match them just by the pictures alone. As kind of like the next level up for a child who is learning how to read, you can start by, again, laying all of the control cards out on the work surface first, having them go ahead and match all of the pictures just as a toddler might do, but then actually going in and trying to also match the word labels. And even if they don't really know how to read the entire word label yet on their own, oftentimes they're able to use all kinds of clues like the length of the word or the beginning and ending letters and things like that to figure out the actual matches for each of the labels. So definitely give them the opportunity to try if they are starting to read. And then finally, if you have a child who is proficiently reading, you would give them the pictures and the word labels and have them read and match them together. And then they would actually go back and use those control cards as a means of checking their work. This way the activity is self-correcting. And finally, the last activity for this category are spring-themed 3-part cards. So again, these would work exactly the same way as the Backyard Birds 3-part cards. You just want to figure out what level your child is ready for and then present the activity to them in that way. And honestly, this can also count as a language activity. It's not exclusively science, although I put it into this category because they're learning about the different aspects of spring as a season. And honestly, you could probably say the same thing for a lot of different activities across the Montessori curriculum as a whole, because it is a holistic curriculum where things are intended to cross over and overlap with one another to create that cohesive sense of learning. Okay, so speaking of language, let's go ahead and move on to the language category of activities. And the first one is a series of St. Patrick's Day mazes. So mazes are not only really fun and challenging for preschoolers, but they're also really great for handwriting practice. Just learning how to hold the pencil, how to keep it steady, follow a specific line. It's pretty challenging work, honestly, but it's something that they find really engaging. And just a little tip for you, if you plan to reuse any of your mazes, then just laminate them and give your child a dry erase marker instead of a pencil. This way they can wipe it off when they're done, and then they can do it as many times as they'd like. The next activity are rhyming riddles, and for this one, your child is going to receive 2 sets of cards, one of which have a rhyming riddle printed on them. So this is likely something that you would do with your child. And then the other set of cards are the pictures that correspond to the answers to the riddles. Now, when you do this activity with your child, make sure that you review the names of each of the picture cards first ahead of time. This way your child is familiar with what the names of each of the pictures are, and then you're setting them up for success to be able to correctly identify that rhyme as they're going through the activity with you. Another fun activity to try is beginning sounds build a shamrock. So for this activity, your child is presented with a couple of different mats that have a shamrock shape printed onto them, and then a basket of little shamrock leaves that all have different pictures on them. And your child's task is to go through one shamrock leaf at a time, identify what the picture is, so for example, boy, and identify the beginning sound for that word, in this case, b, and then place it on one of the mats. Then they'll take out another shamrock. They'll identify the picture, figure out the beginning sound, and if it is the same sound, it'll go on the same mat as the first one. If not, it'll go on its own mat. And they'll continue in that fashion until they've gone through all of the shamrock leaves and place them onto the correct mat, so that each mat contains only the same beginning sound for all of the pictures. Again, this activity can also be done as a cut and paste activity, but here I know that I'd like to reuse it, so I laminated the pictures and the little shamrock leaves and added some Velcro sticky dots. The next activity focuses on identifying ending sounds playing a game of I Spy Bingo. So this is a fun activity that you can do with your child. You will present them with one of the I Spy Bingo mats, and then there's an answer card that comes with it where you can call out the different letter sounds that you're looking for at the ending of various words. And as your child is able to identify the correct ending sound that they see on their mat, they can place some kind of a small token on their mat to mark it off. In this case, I've chosen to use just some small gold coins that I found at the dollar store, since this is a St. Patrick's themed activity, but you could use anything. You can use small little vase gem fillers, you can use counters, you can even just use a dry erase marker and have them mark it off with a dry erase marker too, whatever works for you. And then the final language activity is middle sounds pot of gold sorting. So for this one, your child is presented with a series of mats that correspond to the different vowels that they might find in the middle of various CVC words. So A, E, I, O, and U, or as your child will know it, A, I, and They also have a small basket of gold coins with a picture on them, where their task is to identify what the picture is and then think about what the middle sound is for that word and then place it onto the corresponding mat. And just a little tip for you when preparing the activity, I know sometimes it can be hard to remember what all of the pictures are supposed to be sometimes, because as adults we have such a wide vocabulary, it can sometimes be more than one thing. So I have found that a helpful way for me to remember what the picture is in case I forget, and also it can be used for a reading child as a self-correcting mechanism, but is to just put the answers on the back. Just tape it right to the back of the mat. This way you have it as a reference just in case you need to look at it. Okay, so moving on to some math activities, let's start off with some spring sequencing cards. So for this activity, your child receives a basket of cards that each correspond to a different sequence, a different storyline that they need to figure out. And their job is to first figure out which of the cards go together, and then to put them in the correct order. Which comes first, which comes next, which comes third or next, and then which comes last. And then once they're able to do that, they have properly sequenced the little story of events from beginning to end. And this is actually a really important foundational math skill for later mathematics. The next spring-themed math activity is counting ladybugs. So this activity is a themed twist on the classic cards and counters activity. Your child's goal is to first lay out all of the number cards or tiles or even just sandpaper numbers, whatever you're using, in the correct sequence from 1 to 9. And then they will count out ladybugs and place them underneath the appropriate number tile or card as they go from 1 all the way to 9. And as an optional extension to this activity, you also might consider having your child match the colored beads from the colored bead stair to each of the numbers as well if you happen to have that material on hand, but definitely not a requirement. The one thing you do want to make sure of is that you have exactly the right number of ladybugs, or whatever counter you choose to use. It doesn't have to be ladybugs, but whatever your counters are, make sure you have the exact correct number of them for your child to correctly do numbers 1 through 9, which if you add that up, it comes to 45 different counters. If your child does it correctly, then they should not have any ladybugs left over when they are done. If they get to the end and they have some extras, then they know right away at a glance that they've missed something along the way, and they can go back and figure out where their mistake was. Or if they don't have enough by the time they get to number 7, 8, or 9, then they know they've made a mistake. So always make sure that you've got exactly 45 counters in your bowl. This way your child is able to self-correct. The next activity is spring number puzzles, which is perfect for a child who is working on their number sequencing. So for this one, you're going to give your child a basket that contains the number puzzle pieces in it. And their task is to place the numbers in sequential order in order to build the picture, just like you would with a puzzle. Now for children who are younger or who are new to the activity, you will want to start off with some easier numbers, just from 1 to 5 or 1 to 9, whatever you choose to give them that you know that they will have some success with. But keep it simple at first. And then as their counting skills grow, you can begin to offer them more complex number puzzles that perhaps start in the middle of the 20s or the middle of the 60s, and they go from there. There are also different versions that offer skip counting. So it'll go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, or 5, 10, 15, 20, and so on. So if that's something that your child is working on, then you can offer them a skip counting version of the number puzzles. And again, for a younger child, definitely only offer them one number puzzle set at a time. time, but as they gain some experience, you can offer them more than one set of puzzles in the same tray or basket. All you have to do is label the backs of the puzzles with something to help them identify, like a specific colored dot. And the final math activity are St. Patrick's Day addition strips. So these are obviously great for children who are working on their basic addition skills. The set that I have here actually do come with little numbers that you can cut out, and then they can paste them on there. Or if you laminate everything and use Velcro sticky dots, then they can just stick them on there and you can reuse them. But personally, my child prefers to use dry erase markers most of the time. She doesn't really like to fuss over all the tiny little pieces. So I just give her a dry erase marker and let her have at it, and it works great, especially since right now she's actively working on her number writing skills. All right, the next category are our arts and crafts activities. The first one are just some super simple St. Patrick's Day scissor strips. So these are really great for children who are just learning how to cut in a straight line, or maybe they need a little more challenge and they're learning how to cut on curved lines and zigzag lines and what have you. These scissor strips are really great to print out ahead of time, have them readily available in your child's art area along with some scissors. They can also be reused if you have your child save the pieces that they cut in like a small bowl. They can reuse them as part of gluing practice or in an arts and crafts project. The next activity is Spring in Paintings I Spy. So for this activity, your child is presented with a series of picture cards containing some famous paintings that are all centered on the season of spring, along with a set of cards that contain a small little cutout from somewhere in the painting. And your child's task is to first lay out all of the paintings and then one by one go through the I Spy cards looking for the clue that matches it to the proper painting. Now, a variation of this activity that you can try with an older child who is maybe ready for some more challenge is to use the descriptions that come with this printable. Read the descriptions out loud to your child and have them use the clues to visually identify the paintings just from listening to the description. And then the last arts and crafts activity is an egg carton honeybee. So for this activity, you need just a few basic supplies, including an egg carton that you were planning to recycle anyway, along with some paint and paint brushes, some glue, and a couple of twist ties or pipe cleaners. They're pretty easy to make. All you have to do is paint the egg carton that becomes the body of the honeybee. And you can even paint on some eyes, or maybe use googly eyes if you have some. I just didn't have any on hand, so we painted our eyes on. And then you're going to use the twist ties for antennae. And then you can use some white paper to make a small set of wings that they can glue on once everything is dry. Now, I will say that this activity is not Montessori specific, but it's definitely Montessori friendly because there is some room for creativity, and my girls definitely enjoyed it, so I thought it was worth sharing with you. Now, the last category of spring-themed activities are related to music, and a really fun one that I came across is the I'm a Little Leprechaun song. So this is actually a St. Patrick's Day themed song that I believe is sung to the tune of I'm a Little Teapot. I have done several of these before with my children for other seasons, like fall. There was one about a pumpkin, and they all kind of sound the same, but the words are different. And I will tell you, to this day, my girls still remember the words. So it seems super simple, but it's something that toddlers and preschoolers find super engaging and definitely worth trying out. Now, that song is just one example of the ways that you can incorporate some seasonal elements into your child's music work at home. There are also lots of action rhymes and finger plays that are all related to the spring theme that you can very likely find online. But if you're not sure and you need some ideas, I wanted to share with you the really amazing resource where I got the Leprechaun song and some ideas for some of the other action rhymes and finger plays that I'm going to be doing with my children. And it's actually where I got a lot of the printable activities that you saw in today's video. So there are 3 amazing Montessori bloggers that I personally have been following for several years now. They always put out incredible resources, a lot of which can actually be purchased on websites like Teachers Pay Teachers. But these 3 amazing ladies, Simi from Trillia Montessori, Catherine from I Believe in Montessori, and Yulia from Welcome to Mommyhood, they collectively together run something called the Hands-On Activities Club. They actually just closed their current enrollment period, but they are going to have another one in the fall in August. They give you access to literally hundreds of these amazing printable resources all in one spot, curated by theme or unit study, by the month and the season. Like, It's incredible. And by the way, this video is not sponsored. I am literally just such a huge fan of the work that they do, and that's where I get a lot of my resources, so I thought it would be good to share it with you guys. But that is where I found a lot of these printables that I shared with you in the video today. Okay, so the last part of today's video that I promised to share with you are just a couple of spring-themed, Montessori-friendly book recommendations. These are books that we personally own in our home or that we have checked out from the library. They are kid-approved, Montessori-friendly, and I know that they would make a great addition to your child's bookshelf. The first one is one of our family favorites, and it's called Goodbye Winter, Hello Spring. So this is actually part of a series of books that really teaches children about the transitions between different seasons, as far as the physical differences that they might notice when they go outside during those transitions. And this is one that my children and I read all year long. They absolutely love it, so I would highly recommend it to you. Another really big favorite in our home is Up in the Garden and Down in the Dirt. This one follows the story of a young girl and her grandmother at the very beginning of spring when they are just preparing their garden to plant everything, and it follows them all the way through the seasons again until winter comes and the garden is put to sleep. Lots of educational information, beautiful illustrations, and again, a favorite around here, so of course I'm going to recommend it to you. The next one is called Plants Feed Me, and we really enjoy this book because it has a lot of really detailed but still basic illustrations that young children can understand that shows them how a seed actually grows and what the different parts are of various fruits and vegetables that they may or may not have tried at some point. So it exposes them to all of the different variety that exists out there and also helps them to understand how their food actually grows. The next book is called And Then It's Spring, which follows the story of a boy who is patiently, or maybe not so patiently, waiting for the arrival of spring as he goes outside to find that everything is still brown, but goes through the process of planting his seeds and checking each day, day in and day out, waiting for them to sprout, only to find that it's taking a really long time until finally one day he goes outside and everything has started sprouting and has finally turned green again. Another great book is called How a Seed Grows. This one is aimed at helping young children better understand the actual scientific process behind a seed germinating and eventually growing. And it does this by actually relating to an experiment that your child could actually follow along with if they want. So there is an interactive component to this book as well. The next book is another family favorite. It's called Peek Inside a Beehive. This one is great for little hands because there are lots of flaps for your child to lift and explore, lots of little surprises for them to find, and it teaches them all about the secret life of honeybees, the functioning of the colony inside of a hive. And the final book on my list is one called Yucky Worms. I really like this one because not only is it educational with lots of really detailed illustrations to help your child learn about worms, but it also incorporates a fictional storyline that young children can really relate to. And it's actually a book that my preschooler has requested to check out of our local library on several different occasions now, so I thought that was definitely cause for including it on our list. All right, friends, so there you have it, 26 different Montessori spring activities along with book recommendations. I hope that this was enough to get you excited and feel like you are ready to get out there and start preparing some fun activities for your child at home. If you are interested in learning more about Montessori at home or positive discipline parenting, I offer a couple of e-courses that walk you through it step by step. I also just wrote my very first book called The Montessori Home: Create a Space for Your Child to Thrive, which is now officially available on Amazon in both paperback and ebook, as well as in all major book retailers. So I will put links to those things down below for you in case you're interested in checking them out. If you are new to my channel, then definitely be sure to check out my entire Montessori at Home playlist that has lots of other videos like this one. And if you are interested in watching more, then also consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.